Hey, welcome back. All right. Oh, I think I may have messed up my camera here a little bit. All right, we're going to play around with a video podcast today. I have no idea how this is going to turn out. We're going to figure it out. And, if it fails horribly, then you will never see this. So it's not going to matter. And if you are seeing this, watching it, listening to it, then it means that it worked, at least in some regards. So I'm going to talk about the trauma bond with food today. This is something that I thought about as I was pitching to be a guest on another podcast. It kind of sparked this idea and this concept of we can have a trauma bond with food just like we can have a trauma bond with another person. And so in order to better understand how the food plays out, I'm going to explain trauma bonding from a perspective or this like trauma bond with a person, which we often will also call the abuse cycle, and how this plays out with a person. Then I'll show you how it plays out with food, because often what happens is it's one cycle that might be outside of us, that's external, and then there's another cycle that's internal. So we can look at how we are abusive to ourselves, how we have abusive relationships and toxic relationships with food, with body, with the scale, with the mirror, right? This is what we want to be thinking about and kind of looking at, or where are these patterns showing up and playing out in my life. And so often this relationship cycle has played out in somebody's life when they are binge eating or emotionally eating. Not all the time, like that. I don't think this is 100% foolproof, but so often this is what's happening. So, when it comes to people and relationships, and a form of like emotional, psychological manipulation and abuse is going to be, it starts with the love bombing. So, love, and we're not going to go into all of the details of this here. I just want to give you a framework, right? But love bombing is often talks of the future, it's intense feelings, it's big, quick feelings for you. It's often like big shows, big displays of affection. So, it might be gifts or doing big gestures, big things for you, maybe big fancy dates. And so it's often there's a lot. It's like too much too soon. There's a lot. However, when this like feels good, when it feels like, oh my gosh, they love me, when you see love bombing as real love, it's going to feel amazing. The challenge is what happens next, right? It's like when we expect this to go on forever and ever. So after love bombing, after so many days, so many weeks, so many months, like somebody can just love bomb you for a long period of time, but there will be some kind of ego injury or narcissistic injury. So they feel rejected, they feel shamed, they feel triggered in some way, and usually I would say shame is often a big one for anybody who is in this cycle of, in this pattern. Anytime they feel shame, it feels really terrible. So they don't want to feel it. It comes out in abusive behavior. So they are trying to get their needs met. And in that way, they are now going to be controlling, domineering, manipulative. They might use demeaning words or phrases, and they are trying to essentially get you to meet their needs for them. So it's like if they feel ashamed or if they feel disrespected, if something happens, it's like they need to get back to not feeling that anymore, and they need you to show up in a certain way in order to do that. And so it's now that abuse often will come out on you. So there's some kind of abusive behavior, and it triggers your nervous system. So your nervous system goes into fight, flight, freeze, or appease. That's how I think of it. So usually we're going to go through multiple levels. So my first instinct is to freeze, then I appease, then I get the hell out of there. So that is usually how I would handle these situations. When my nervous system gets activated, that is the process that I go through. Now, you might have one that is more prominent than the other, but I would say for most people in this cycle, there's a level of appeasement happening, whether it's the first thing or the second. That is often what's happening because you feel responsible. You feel responsible for their emotions, for their actions, for that situation that they're upset over. It's your fault. You're the problem. So you must now fix it. So now it's your responsibility. You have to say the right thing, do the right thing, smooth it over, fix it, promise never to do it again, whatever it is, right? So it's like appease, placate, you're going to take the blame. And your goal is to get back to the love bombing. That's always what we are trying to do in these situations. It's like we get in these loops and these cycles. Well, I don't know what just happened there, but I want to get us back to when things were good. When your nervous system is calm and regulated, when they're not yelling, when they're not upset, when they're not giving you the silent treatment, you want to get back to this place of calm is really what's happening here, right? I'm going to write that over here. Calm. That's what you want. And that's what we also believe is normal. And so we can be going through this cycle over and over and over again. And one of the hallmarks is you are always trying to get back to this state of being calm, of being peaceful, of what was love bombing, like when it felt so good, so easy, so amazing. And I think this is really interesting because I know I've spent relationships where it was like there was big heavy love bombing, and then there would be these things that like these cycles and this like abusive behavior that would come out, and I was always trying to get us back to where things were at the beginning, where things were when we started, how things were years ago, months ago. And it's like, but we can get back there. And we could, but we could never stay there. That was always the thing, is I always thought like maybe we could get back there and actually stay there and be there for a long period of time, especially if the love bombing period for you felt like it was longer, if it was months, maybe like a year and a half of what felt like love bombing. And then things changed. It's like, oh, well, for so long, we were doing so well. But maybe you weren't, right? Like, and I think back on some of my relationships, and I think the love bombing phase lasted a while, but I also don't know that I was aware and picking up on all of the small, subtle little things. I guarantee that there was more going on and more happening that I was not aware of. And even to this day, like I wouldn't even be able to remember, to recognize. I don't think we were in the love bombing phase as long as my brain wanted to tell me. Okay. But that's typically what it goes through. And so you're good here for a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks, maybe even a couple of months. Most likely not months though, because then there's going to be some kind of other ego injury, narcissistic injury that has them acting out and lashing out in abusive behavior where it's directed at you and you are the one responsible to fix it. You have to fix their emotions, fix their behavior. It's your fault. You take the blame. And sometimes it's a bigger situational aspect. And we get stuck in this cycle. We get stuck here. And that's because we keep thinking that love bombing is real love. That's the real problem, is that we keep thinking that this where you were to begin with, that you keep trying to get back to, is good, healthy, and it's what it was supposed to be. I remember it was around this time last year. I was being love bombed by a guy. Kind of even felt it. Kind of was like, I think it might be love bombing, but it felt so good. And in the moment, it was like, but this feels so amazing. I don't want it to end. I don't want it to go away. I don't want to call it love bombing because I don't want to have to walk away. And I remember later telling a girlfriend about some of the things that he would do, like leaving sticky notes in my apartment. And she was like, he left you how many in your apartment? He left you 8 in your apartment after your first date? That's creepy. And in my mind, I was like, oh my gosh, he loves me so much. Like, he is just like so into me. Oh my gosh, I feel so special. And she, in her mind, she was like, that's creepy. That is way too much. That should not be happening. Right? So again, it's like what your brain is wired for, what it is primed to see as normal or to accept. Okay. And so it's fascinating, right? How this plays out. Now, I want to talk about this from a food standpoint too, because this is where it gets really interesting and where we can really start to take control and responsibility for what's happening and why things are playing out. So I'm going to erase this calm over here for just a sec so I have a little bit of space to write. Your love bombing is like the diet working. Usually it's the first time, maybe the first 1 or 2 times that you're doing the diet and it works, right? You're eating less, you're sticking to the diet rules, you're exercising more, you feel really good. It doesn't feel like you need a lot of willpower. You're just like, man, this is awesome. The diet is working and you lose the weight, and either you lose some of it or you lose all of it. Like maybe you lose and you get to your maintenance weight and you're like feeling really good. Maybe you're just 5 pounds away. Maybe you're like almost there. You're feeling really good. And then there's a life trigger. Life trigger. I guess we can kind of see that. And like, I can't quite tell where the camera cuts off. Okay. So then there's a life trigger and we stop the diet. Stop diet. we fall off, right? We fall off the wagon. Now, it might be that you hit your goal weight, and so now you aren't being so strict. Now you're maybe drinking more, you're eating more, you're going back to eating the foods that you weren't allowed to eat on your diet, right? It's kind of that normal, like, well, I'm not dieting anymore, so I don't have to keep following these rules. I've already lost my weight, and it might be like, well, I lost that 30 pounds in 3 months. Like, that's awesome. Now I can go back to eating cookies and ice cream and burgers and French fries. So, whatever it was that we were previously restricting, we're starting to incorporate back now. What's also happening is often there's emotional eating plus emotional eating. So we can feel triggered here by this life event, and now we're reaching for food to feel better in the moment. So sometimes it's that we stop pursuing the diet and we kind of fall off. Sometimes it's we stop following the diet rules because we are emotionally eating, because we are turning to food for that emotional pleasure and release and escape. It's often what we're trying to do. We're trying to escape and outrun our emotions and the negative ones in particular, right? So I turn to food for that. So we're going through, we have this, we've stopped the dieting, we're now emotionally eating, but what can happen is this might trigger shame, which is also interesting because your nervous system right here being triggered, and then you feeling responsible for whatever the injury is down here, this also typically is shame. I'm going to write that in blue just to keep the things aligned. Right? Is like we feel shame, we feel responsible, which is why there is such a strong reason to fix it. Okay? Same thing here. You're emotionally eating, you can feel shame, or you gain weight and now you feel shame, or both. Sometimes both happen. Sometimes it's you hit your goal weight, and right in this, because it's everybody's cycles are going to look a little bit different, and different phases of life will bring about different cycles. But maybe you lose the weight, you stop dieting, you start emotionally eating though, or you continue to emotionally eat. You shame yourself for that. Then you notice you're gaining weight. There's shame for that. We don't want to feel it, and we are constantly. So then, what do? It's I've got to try to get back to doing that diet and making that diet work. The problem is that we have a harder and harder time going back to the diet. We can't restrict as much or for as long. So we might be able to stay on the diet for a couple of weeks now instead of a couple of months. Now maybe we can do the diet for a little bit of time, but it takes us longer and longer every time we fall off to get back on. And we keep going back to this diet working phase because we think, well, I just have to stick to this diet. So if you first lost your weight with something like Weight Watchers, right? Not to pick on them, but let's just say it's Weight Watchers, and you were only eating about 1,200 calories, you significantly reduced how much you were eating, you increased your exercise, but then life happened, you stopped counting points and tracking, there was some emotional eating, and then there was some shame, you gained some weight, you try to go back to Weight Watchers, and you can't stick with the same number of points. You really struggle, and now you're hungrier and you're like, I can't do it, but you keep coming back to it. It's like we keep going back and we keep trying to do it more and do it harder, even though it's not working, because that in our mind, it did work. In our mind, we kept telling ourselves, well, this is what worked. It was like the first time I low carb dieted and I lost weight. And I kept telling myself after that, well, I just have to go back to low carbing it harder. I just have to restrict more, exercise more, eat less, low carb harder. And I kept going back to, I have to eat low carb. I have to eat low carb because that was essentially where it was working. Just like in the relationship side of things, that's where the relationship was working, was in that love bombing phase. But it wasn't. It was never working. That really, it was like it was working in the sense that your two dysfunctional levels as people connected, like your wounds matched. Your wounds matched the bite mark, and their wounds matched your bite mark, right? It's like you fit together. Your trauma pieces fit. Here, the diet doesn't work. The diet doesn't last because you can't keep the weight off for life, but you have a story that this is when it was working, that this is when it was good, and so that's what you keep trying to get back to. Sometimes you might change the diet and change what you're doing to try to find when it's going to be easy, when it's going to feel effortless, when you're going to be able to lose the weight and not gain it back, when you're going to be able to not have to stress and not have to worry. So you might try a different diet, but we're always looking for that high of it works fast, we lose our weight and we feel amazing. There's like not a lot of issues, not a lot of hiccups, not a lot of like problem areas, and it's then like things are good. But inevitably, life happens and there are triggers. There are life triggers, there are circumstance changes, there are emotional triggers, and whether you stop the diet because you've lost the weight or you stop it because you can't do it, maybe you can't like just keep going, or there's some kind of emotional trigger that takes you off plan and eating off plan, off course. Sometimes it's like a special occasion. It's Valentine's Day, a wedding, a honeymoon, an anniversary, a birthday. Maybe it's a big special event. Maybe it's like a 40th or a 50th birthday. Maybe it's Christmas or New Year's, right? Like there could be other like circumstances that are happening that take us off of that plan, that diet protocol. And then we feel shame and regret. Because typically what happens when we're off, it's like, well, screw it. I've already blown it this week. I'll start over Monday. And we keep blowing off what could, like, we throw away the rest of the day. We throw away the rest of the week when we could be focused on saving it. And so we keep going around and around in this cycle, trying to make the diet work. And the key piece and the key thing to recognize here with both of these patterns is that love bombing is not real love. It is you trying to get your emotional needs met from another person. And this diet and these diets that you keep trying to do, they don't actually work because you can't actually keep the weight off for the rest of your life without hating your life. You can't, like, maybe you kept it off for a little bit of time. And so you kept telling yourself, well, it worked. It used to work. It worked for a time. But you have to acknowledge like that never worked. Otherwise, you would not have regained your weight. If a diet really works, it's you lose the weight and you can stick with it forever. You can keep doing that diet for the rest of your life. That's how you're going to be able to maintain it. And until then, we have to accept that the diet isn't working. So the way to break these cycles is we have to start here. Like this is where we break it. We have to start by recognizing that love bombing is not real love. And it's identifying what emotional needs am I getting met from somebody else that I now need to meet within myself. And it's recognizing that this diet does not work, which means we have to let go of the restriction and stop trying to restrict food because the restriction is only leading to binging. And the binging only brings on shame and regret and self-loathing that we then keep trying to just get out of by more restriction. It's that constant restrict, binge, regret cycle over and over and over again. And it doesn't work. If it did, you would have lost the weight by now. Like you would have a healthy relationship with food, but we don't. We just keep moralizing food and then moralizing ourselves based off of what we eat. So this is where we have to break it. We have to stop restriction, which means we make different food rules rather than food being good or bad or off limits or I can eat this, not that. Rather than those being your food rules, you have to decide that your food rules are now things like I'm not going to eat standing up out of the pantry or the fridge. I'm going to put my food in a bowl or on a plate. I'm going to eat sitting down with a spoon or a fork, or I'm going to, portion things out. I'm going to eat one chip at a time and wait 30 seconds or a minute before eating another one. I'm going to put my spoon down between bites of soup or my hamburger down between bites. It's little things like that becomes the guide. I'm going to eat when I'm hungry and stop when I'm satisfied. That is the biggest food rule that's going to take you so far because it's not as important what you're eating as why you're reaching for it. Most of us know what's healthy and most of us do like healthy foods. Maybe not all of the foods. Like I'm really not a fan of kale or eggplant. Like there are certain things that I just don't love and that's okay. There are plenty of other foods that I do like and I do enjoy. I know it's healthy. I know that vegetables are healthier than potato chips, but what has me reaching for the potato chips, right? It's not about knowing what to do. It's understanding why we don't want to. It's understanding the physiological cravings that drive us wanting certain foods and what physical needs that food's trying to meet for us, just as much as understanding the emotional desire for food and how food is trying to meet an emotional need for you. That's what we get to now uncover and decode. But this is where we've got to start. And so we can have dysfunctional relationships with other people, just like we can have dysfunctional relationships within ourselves. And I think food or even alcohol is a great place to see this and recognize what's really happening. So you get to tell yourself a new story. You get to change the rules here. And this is where it starts. This is where, we've got to start here. That's where it ends. So we are no longer restricting food. We're going to eat when we're hungry, stop when we're satisfied. We're going to make a list of, here are the things that I want to eat more of. Here are the things that I want to eat less of. We're going to have a simple plan moving forward. Things like addressing sleep, water, stress, movement, right? You can't out-train your nutrition, but we do want to be moving our bodies in a way that feels good to us. That is what it takes. That's what it looks like. I have lost more weight and been able to keep it off and feel so at peace and at ease with food when I am eating hamburgers and French fries and pizza, because I'm not eating that every single day, but I am allowing it usually once a month, right? And maybe with the French fries, it's a little bit more than that, but it's allowing these foods. I don't eat pizza often, but every couple of months, might even be more like once a quarter, I want pizza. And I'm going to eat 2 pieces, and then I'm going to have a salad or a bowl of soup or something else where I'm not only eating the pizza. I'm looking at, how do I make this fit within my lifestyle? How does it fit within my day, within my week? And I plan on it, and I'm intentional with it. And I eat when I'm hungry, and I stop when I'm satisfied. Those are some of the biggest things that we have to start doing. This is what I help people with, is understanding the dysfunctional patterns and cycles that play out with food, with body, and with other people so that you can break them. And we need to understand how some of these relationships kind of intertwine, how comments and things from other people now impact our relationship with food or our bodies. We need to understand how we have this toxic cycle with food and where it comes from, just like we can have this toxic cycle with people. And even, where does that come from? Because so often we grow up and we learn these dynamics from a very young age. So it's bringing awareness and understanding it. And then it's learning how to solve it, how to break it. It's much more emotional and psychological than just tell me what to eat and I'll do it. Tell me what to do in the gym and I'll do it. That's not what it's about. So if you'd like some help breaking these patterns for yourself, then I would love to chat. You can schedule your own Break the Cycle call on the website bodyyoucrave.com/BTC, and schedule your own call where we'll walk through and you'll give me an example and I'll show you how it fits into this, how it plays out. This is why you're struggling, though, is because we keep trying to do the same things over and over and expect a result we previously got. See, here's the thing, right? At one point, it seemed to work. And this is where we have to tell ourselves that was not real love. That was not real working of the diet. It's hard, but when we can make peace and acceptance with that, that's when there's true freedom. And then I know it feels scary when we don't have a plan or a path of what am I supposed to do? Because so often we have our certainty and our confidence wrapped up in these food rules. I'm going to give you different rules that are actually going to help you to feel certain and confident in yourself, where you can still eat the food you love, you can still drink the food you love, or the drinks you love. You can still drink the drinks you love, and you can still lose weight. You can still enjoy your life. That's what this is all about, is to create a life that you love, where food is not your primary source of joy, pleasure, relaxation, or adventure. All right. I hope you all have a fabulous week. We're about to find out if this video will post or not, but I can't wait to talk with you more. Questions, comments, fears, regrets, send me a message on Instagram. Come find me, Jillian Amadea on Instagram, and feel free to reply to any of the emails that I send out. You can always hit reply and you will talk to me specifically. And if you've got questions about what this would look like for you, then definitely schedule a call, because the awareness and the epiphanies that people have just from walking through this cycle in their own life is so mind-blowing, and it's so good. Here's to creating the life and body you crave.
If this episode resonated with you, it's time to break free from destructive cycles around food, alcohol, and toxic relationships. Your next step? Book your free Break the Cycle call, where you'll finally see why your binge eating and relationship patterns are so deeply connected, and how to break free from both for good. You'll walk away with fierce clarity and a game plan to step into a life full of fun, adventure, and self-love. Grab your spot now at www.bodyyoucrave.com/BTC. It's time to break the cycle. I'll show you how.